This is the Farm Monitor. For over 50 years, your source for agribusiness news and features from around the Southeast and across the country, focusing on one of the nation's top industries, agriculture. The Farm Monitor is produced by one of the largest general farm organizations, the Georgia Farm Bureau. Now here are your hosts, Ray DeLessio and Kenny Burgamy.
Well, you heard it right. Since 1966, that is 53 years. Yes, 53 years. Your place for state and national ag news, and so another show begins. Hi again, folks. Welcome to the Farm Monitor. I'm Ray DeLessio.
And I'm Kenny Burgamy. Happy to have you along with us for the next 30 minutes. Coming up, right to farm laws. Could they be in jeopardy of going away? We'll tell you about some crucial lawsuits involving the hog industry that could potentially affect Georgia in the years to come.
A few years ago, we told you about Comfort Farms in Milledgeville, Georgia, and how it's helping veterans like owner John Jackson to heal. Well, so many good things have happened since that story aired. We'll tell you how John and the rest of his friends are now venturing outside their comfort zone, all in the name of helping fellow farmers.
And then later, we sit down with former Governor Nathan Deal to discuss some of the highs and lows of his time in office, why he says he's so thankful to you, the American farmer. These stories and more starting right now on the Farm Monitor. Right to farm laws in the U.S., which deny nuisance lawsuits against farmers that use standard farming practices, are currently being challenged, especially in North Carolina. That's where 26 different cases are focused on hog farms. Damon Jones tells you why it's such a problem for the agricultural industry and why Georgia farmers should be paying attention.
Hog farmers in the second largest pork-producing state in the country have recently come under attack, as 26 separate lawsuits have been filed in North Carolina over the past year by neighboring residents claiming the operations are negatively impacting the enjoyment and use of their property due to a number of issues.
They complain of odor, they complain of trucks, and then lesser degree different issues depending on the plaintiff and depending on the circumstance. Flies, some have complained about buzzards. Odor being the main claim. In the law, in nuisance law, they're using a corner of the law to get to what's known as an annoyance claim and then trying to drive up the verdicts after that.
So far, 3 verdicts have already gone against the farmers, totaling more than $500 million in damages. And farmers believe a big reason why is the courts will not allow the jurors to visit the farms and residences in question.
These juries are being drawn from the urban area around Raleigh. They're questioned about their familiarity with agriculture. It's very clear from these panels there's no familiarity, and they're not allowed to visit the farms. We would love for these jurors to visit the farms because then they would see that these farms are not a nuisance.
And this could start a domino effect, resulting in lawsuits against farmers all across the country, including right here in Georgia, the nation's top poultry-producing state.
There's no question that these suits are being brought by class action, big litigation law firms that have a focus of bringing lawsuits against agriculture. So could it happen in Georgia? Of course it could.
The choosing of sides has put a real strain on rural communities in North Carolina as it's pitted neighbor against neighbor.
These lawsuits have come in and they've really divided communities and have had a severe impact on us. And it's not just jury awards. You know, it's the idea that it's even going on. It's been very painful.
One piece of advice for the farmers is to be proactive before a potential problem arises. And even though that might mean getting out of their comfort zone, it could pay dividends in the future.
Know your neighbor, know your area, and cultivate that relationship with folks. And you maybe have to go out farther than what you thought. In some of these cases, the plaintiffs are a mile away. And when you go and stand at the farm and you go a mile away, you don't even know that there is a relationship between those areas.
Reporting from Macon, I'm Damon Jones for the Farm Monitor.
In other ag news, First Lady Marty Kemp, the guest of honor, as the Georgia Department of Agriculture hosted its annual Farm to Table Source Show at the Atlanta Farmers Market. Mrs. Kemp, of course, a huge advocate for Georgia grown. In fact, she recently announced that one of her goals is to ensure that virtually all the food served at the mansion is grown right here in Georgia. Now in its 5th year, the Source Show provides an avenue for nutritionists to meet growers and vendors from across the state that can provide Georgia ag products for their specific operation.
It's a difficult thing for our directors to constantly connect with a vendor that can provide items to them. Farmers, vendors. Our school nutrition directors can't constantly try to reach out, but the Department of Ag does.
To come together and actually meet the person who's making the buying decisions. And that's just critical, right? It's what we've got to do more to advance our 2020 vision for school nutrition. Our vision's been that every school, every meal, every day, the start of the 2020 school year, that 20% of it be Georgia grown. So this is what's help us get there.
In the meantime, when you think of a cricket, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, for one operation in southeast Georgia, it's a precious commodity and the namesake of their business. John Holcomb went to the farm and tells us what's chirping.
Way down in southeast Georgia, farming is nothing out of the ordinary. Chances are, any road you take, you'll pass a cotton field or a plot of land set in timber. But in the small town of Glenville, there's a different type of farming that's quite out of the normal. Cricket farming.
Well, the farm got started around 1947 when Tal Armstrong rolled into town, and him being a contractor plumber working at the Georgia State Prison, a very avid fisher and hunter, he decided to send his son out on a mission to catch crickets. They put him in a sugar barrel, and they realized that they multiplied one day, that it wasn't ants in the bottom of the barrel, and so they started experiment with it.
They kept experimenting until they got the hang of it and found the best method to grow them. And before long, a demand was there.
They started playing with it, and they had a broiler room back then, and so they just kind of moved around back. Well, it started working real good. Posted signs, started advertising, until we had to turn around and build a cricket farm.
Since their beginning, a lot has changed for them. Their customer base has expanded well beyond just the fishing business, and due to the pet industry boom starting back in the 90s, they've had to adapt and expand to more than just crickets.
Everything has just changed in the pet world because now we have 7 sizes of crickets, whatever the reptile needs. We carry all the housing for the crickets, just anything that a hobbyist would need, a pet store would need, any supplies like that.
And just like all other types of farming, growing crickets takes a lot of work. And they have challenges just like with growing anything else.
Cricket farming is 7 days a week. We have to come in, we have to check temperatures daily. Each age of cricket has to stay a certain age to grow out properly and to grow out on time. If the heat falters, even on eggs in your incubating room, it could stall a few days on hatching. And when you're setting schedules and you have to be in that room on Monday and the crickets have not hatched out until Wednesday or Thursday, then it does cause a big challenge to get the crickets caught up.
They also have far more challenges than just operations. Like all other commodities in Georgia, they also have to deal with things like disease pressure and pests.
You're challenging against diseases. You have to be extra careful. You have to be careful with sprays, with contacts, with different things like that. You're always fighting different beetle bugs that get into the crickets. You're fighting spiders. That's just a common household spider. But there's always something that you will have to come up against, and you have to be ready for it.
Reporting in Glenville for the Farm Monitor, I'm John Holcomb.
John, thanks so much. Now, after the break, an update to a story we brought you 3 years ago. How Comfort Farms and owner John Jackson continue to help veterans in need and the ways in which they are now paying it forward.
In 2016, the Monitor brought you the story of John Jackson, a combat veteran who founded Stag Vets Incorporated and Comfort Farms in Milledgeville, Georgia, a 20-acre property that enables wounded veterans like John to heal through farming while at the same time giving them a sense of purpose. Our story, however, wasn't the only one. Others followed, and before he knew it, John once again found himself being hailed a national hero.
We were getting hit from every single direction. I mean, my social media posts blew up, my emails, our website, everything started going through. And all those things, just getting that small amount of exposure to kind of say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is where we're at, here's the vision, really narrowed the focus for us as far as what we need to do. And it really made it more, how can I say this? It made it, it sealed the deal for why we were here.
And all that exposure led to a plethora of opportunity, including partnerships with USDA, FSA, and NRCS. John was invited to give a TED Talk, a showcase for speakers presenting great, well-informed ideas. Even the popular show Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmer featured the farm on one of its episodes. And now, there's this, the soon-to-be-released documentary, Comfort Farms. However, John tells me the focus has never been about the farm itself. It's always been about what the farm can do for others in need.
We're creating what they call the Georgia Small Family Farmers Association. It's a grassroots effort into helping small family farms get to where they need. Comfort Farms sees the need to go beyond just a nonprofit and to create more social enterprise. And so we've just initiated the House Bill 230 that's in the House that will allow for a B Corporation, which would allow investment to come in and allow these guys who actually come to Comfort Farms and learn to be able to get investment and grow the entrepreneurial spirit in the state of Georgia. That's where it's at right now.
So in hindsight, what began as a sanctuary and peaceful refuge for veterans of war, Comfort Farms has now become their headquarters, a base camp, so to speak, a place where new missions are planned and then executed on a different type of battlefield.
When I wrote the blueprint for our way forward, it's kind of something that we do, every Ranger does before you go out to land nav or whatever. You sit down, you chart your course. Part of that was to figure out what we need to build into this program, and that was service again. Food security, community outreach, helping people. We had to identify systems that were not working in our community. Small family farms are really struggling just to make ends meet due to the corporatization actually due to corporate vertically integrating on their own, and now leaving a lot of the small family farms that they were working with hung out to dry. So where do you come in? Do we just leave them out to dry, or as Comfort Farms, can I instill a new mission within the vets who come here to actually be able to help out? And that's what it is about. So I get guys who've never wanted to farm, but they have this service aspect in them. They want to learn how to farm. They want to learn how to give back to their community. Farming is just synonymous with war in so many ways that I can't even explain. And for why it works, there's just some magic behind it.
And make no mistake about it, Comfort Farms is a well-oiled machine and run very similar to a military operation. For those who choose to accept the mission, John has these words of wisdom.
There's nothing comfortable about Comfort Farms. The farm is ran, even though we're a nonprofit, the farm is ran as a structured business. We have things that we have to do. We have deadlines that we have to meet. And it's definitely that military aspect on the farm environment, working with our communities. There's just so much stuff going around. It's food. Food is life. The dirt is life. Sustainability is life, and without it, we're nothing.
In our first meeting with John, one of the questions that was asked, will the mission ever be complete? 3 years later, his answer hasn't changed.
We're still losing 22 a day. We still got vets who are, like myself, who go through a lot of things, man. You know, we keep the facade that we're okay. You know, we deal with a lot, but it's until every vet is accounted for, until every vet has hope, until every vet family has a sense that, you know, we can handle this thing. You know, I don't have a long life to live to achieve all the goals that I want. So I feel I need to continue to do what I can while I'm here.
In Milledgeville, Georgia, I'm Ray DeLessio.
Ralph Waldo Emerson famously said, "The first farmer was the first man." Jan Jones is a millennial peanut farmer who's creating some firsts of her own. As a woman who happens to be really good at her job.
Like I still get the, oh, you're still farming? You still like it? You know, 5 years later, and I'm like, at what point will this not be a novelty to you?
Jan and her sisters grew up helping out on the family's farm in southwest Georgia. She earned her degree, set her sights on a teaching career. But after a disappointing first year, Jan came home to the farm to work part-time with her dad and figure out a new plan.
I really liked seeing what I was accomplishing behind me as I was doing it. That immediate gratification was something that I didn't see in teaching at all. I fell in love with it, so I stayed.
That's not to say she hadn't tore up a few things, because she has.
Like, one of the things that really helped that process was figuring out that he wouldn't be hard on me if he didn't think that I could take it. And if he wasn't hard on me, I wouldn't be the farmer that I am.
She's a farmer and a businesswoman. Jan took out a loan, and now she manages the agricultural and financial responsibility for 150 acres. But Hurricane Michael threw all of that into jeopardy.
Just getting ready to move into South Georgia.
The storm forecast to hit in the crucial days when the peanuts were ready to harvest.
Dad and I, we had to have a conversation. Do we dig or do we leave them in the ground? It's gut-wrenching. Like, there's a stress level there that's just really hard to convey, but then at the same time, there's nothing you can do about it. What are we gonna wake up to Thursday morning?
Their joint decision to leave the peanuts in the ground ultimately saved the crop, but it was still a gamble.
Dad and I, neither one of us by any means have like the Cadillac version of crop insurance. You can't afford it.
There's a lot of rewards in farming, but there's also a lot of heartaches and a lot of disappointments. I'm proud that she's got it in her blood and wants to do it. No doubt she could probably go do something and make more money, but a lot of times money isn't happiness.
And if you could somehow harvest happiness, it would be the sweetest crop of all. For now, peanuts will do just fine.
They taste sweeter right after you dig them up.
Well, finally this week, former Governor Nathan Deal is reflecting back.
In his final days at the Capitol, Governor Deal sat down with us and shared what he considers some of his greatest achievements while in office, including the improvements on Jekyll Island.
Well, I am very fortunate to have been raised in a farm environment. My father was a vocational agriculture teacher, and my mother was a first grade school teacher. So in a small community of Sandersville, Georgia, I thought it was a great place to grow up and to become familiar with what the world is all about, starting with agriculture, which is really one of the basic sources of income for our state. I grew up doing the kind of things that farm boys do. I got involved in 4-H, and then I got involved in FFA, showing livestock, participating in public speaking competitions, and I think all of that just prepared me for a life of public service. Well, that's a good question, and I'm very proud of what we've been able to do with the old 4-H camp on Jekyll Island. It's almost a 17-acre tract on a very pristine part of Jekyll Island itself. When I first had the opportunity to see it, I was appalled at the condition. It was an old building facility. They'd done their best to keep it up, but age had taken its toll, and I decided our young people needed a better place to be able to come to a camp. So we were able to convince the General Assembly in 2016, and they put $17 million into the budget for the purposes of totally reconstructing that facility. And we did. We tore the old facilities down and started from scratch, and it is a beautiful campus that has now been created, and I am very pleased that, and we've expanded the use of it by virtue of that, and it's now sort of become a year-round facility that where people come, and it gives a good impression of our state. It certainly gives a good impression of agriculture and agriculture education. Well, it's hard to specify one particular part of our economy that has been affected, but because I think agriculture, like every facet of our economy, has been affected by the good times that we are now enjoying. Agriculture depends on people who buy their products, and we've seen our population grow from the 10th largest state to the 8th largest state, so there are more people that depend on the produce that is produced by our agriculture. And more in modern times, exports have become important to the agriculture community, and the Port of Savannah is a key ingredient in that. We have continued to put money in. We are now well over what was originally contemplated as the state's share of the deepening of the Savannah port and the harbor, and it is on schedule, I'm told. And what that does is it allows the larger vessels to come in, and that helps agriculture because if they are exporting products overseas, they need to have timely ability to export their product, get it to the marketplace as soon as possible. And as a result of what we've done, we've seen our exports from Georgia continue to grow rather rapidly. Now, also in terms of what we've done for agriculture, I think this most recent session of the General Assembly, where I called a special session after Hurricane Matthew, was specifically aimed at trying to help the heartland that was impacted by that particular hurricane. We had about $270 million that was allocated for an emergency funding. It helped to replenish the coffers of state agencies that had used their resources to respond to the disaster. It was used also to help local governments respond. And also we had some $200 million that we created in a loan fund and a tax credit fund, really, for the agricultural community to take advantage of it, primarily aimed at being able to replant some of our forests that were devastated by the hurricane, and to help those pecan growers to be able to replant their pecan orchards that in many cases were totally destroyed. So those are some of the highlights of it, but I think overall agriculture benefits from every other thing that has happened in our state's economy.
Now, next week in part 2 of our conversation with Nathan Deal, the former governor discusses his future plans and one of the trying moments during his time in office. Hope you'll join us then. And with that, we will say so long until next time.
In fact, we'll see you next week right here on the Farm Monitor.
Take care, everybody.